they had a stranglehold. So anyways, so I get to Virginia, Quantico, Virginia as my next duty station. And I jump on, start learning about, infosec and security and stuff, because my job in the Marine Corps was as a SOC analyst essentially. And so I see this weird, like, I get into podcasts, obviously. It was really new. And then see this weird, Hack 5 show that's getting a parody from Dignation. And so Dignation was a podcast I listened to at the time. And I saw, Hack 5, and it's all about hacking and security and stuff. So I got, really into their IRC and their shows and stuff. And a couple episodes in, I noticed that they were in Virginia and they were inviting people down to kind of have party with them. So asked my wife and said, got the weekend pass, and I'm like, hey, can I hang out with random people from the internet? And she's like, no. And so so I went down anyways, and convinced her, obviously, and went down and hung out with Darren and Harrison and all the crew down there, and became fast friends. And like after that, got really into security. After I got out of the Marine Corps, went and joined a SOC. Figured I wanted to do pen testing offense more. Did everything from government work to small businesses to really large businesses like General Electric. Then in red teaming, got into Uber. So startups and big startups and small startups, all like so. That's my resume. From a I've never really been someone who derived value out of my job necessarily. So I've done a lot outside of that. So CCDC, the Cyber Collegiate Defense Competition, Hackers in Education. What else? I've given a couple talks at conferences. I got involved with the Metasploit team because I asked a ton of freaking questions to HD Moore, and there are other people there, Egypt, and so I don't know. Like I don't. When I look back at it, I don't really see that I've the contribution that everyone talks about. Like I joined a bunch of podcasts. I talked a lot of stuff. I wrote a lot of blog posts. Maybe that was one place, but honestly, I've just been a leech for InfoSec and learned as much as I can and tried to give back where I could. But like that's me in a nutshell. InfoSec tree hugger.
Yeah, exactly. So I think you're being a little humble too. Some of the code that you've written, some of the scripts for the rubber duckies and some of the other code that I've followed for a very long time has been some of the most effective tools that I've used on red team engagements. And of course, your reputation precedes you pretty much everywhere, every circle I've been in. I'm actually working with a mutual friend, Pyro.
Nice.
And yeah. So I'm leading their SOC, and it's too bad he couldn't be here tonight. We also had Jason Street on not too long ago, and I know that you and him are acquaintances as well. Yeah, I was in Virginia actually when I stumbled upon some of your code. I had just gotten out of the military, the Navy, and I was doing cryptology in the Navy. Nice. And got into some more of the, I guess, offensive stuff. I'd been doing it for a long time before the military. But then I stumbled upon Hack 5 and, saw some of the tools that they had and quickly started jumping on the code. And it seemed like every time I was looking at, code for the rubber ducky, whether it be, the duck code or whatever, your name was always in it. So I was like, this guy knows what the fuck he's doing. I got to talk to this guy. So what are you doing now? What's your career path right now?
So I'm actually the director of a red team now. This is my first leadership official management role. So I'm trying not to screw up. Essentially, that's what my main focus is right now. But I'll tell you that going from individual contributor to management is jarring, to say the least. Like
Absolutely.
delegating and trusting. I know my team can do what I ask them to do, and it still like eggs me in the back, or like nags me at the back of my head saying, did they do it this way? Did they do it that way? Did they do this? Did they do that? And I got to trust them. Like that's the thing. We have an engagement next week, and it's like just I, I'm holding myself back from going to check, like you know. So I don't know. It's my first time doing it, so I'm sure it'll get natural and be go good after this. But like it's been rough.
It's very intense when you're actually leading a red team. I did some red team leading for Mantech, and it's really kind of complicated because you always want to take over. You want your people to do the work that they do, but then it's hard to keep myself away from the keyboard. And then going from red team to blue team, and then back to red team, and then back to blue team, it's been quite a ride. I think with blue team, it's a little bit more difficult running a SOC than it is a red team. Because you have multiple clients and with multiple issues, and you have to be right every single time. And I think that's the Achilles heel of security is the blue side always has to work 10 times harder than the red side. But what I do,
don't do that. I hate that trope so much. I really do.
But
it's not true.
True.
It's not true. No, it's not. Because okay, so the blue side of things, they see that they have to be right every single time because there's all of these different attackers doing all of these different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it switches. As soon as someone gets access, all they have to do is make one mistake, and then you caught them, right? One thing that you have an alert for, you have them, right? And so like, yes, initially, the blue team has to make no mistakes, right? But after that first, shell access, web shell, command, whatever, they have to be invisible. The red team has to be perfect, and all they have to do is one make mistakes. So I think it's even. I really do. Like
I can see that. I can definitely see that. Yeah, I think a lot of it comes from being in leadership on the blue team for the first time too. Looking at, I've built SOCs all over the planet really, but when you actually step in and take over a SOC that's already built and it's running the way that it's been ran, I think that's the hardest part for me is tuning it. Not only is it tuning it towards the client's needs, but also tuning it towards your leadership style and what you know about defense. But I think it definitely helps if people on the blue side actually have done some red teaming or some pen testing as well. That's one of the things that I try to push to everybody is, definitely got to do both sides to understand either side. When
I worked at Uber, the red and blue were the same team. We didn't call us the purple team. We just called us the security team. But red and blue were exactly the same team, and we switched off roles all the time, right? So like I would be doing SOC stuff day 1, 2, 3, 4, like Wednesday or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then on Thursday I'll be like, hey, that person did, this attacker did this on that web shell. Let's see if we can do that other places, and then you start hunting, and then you start red teaming, and then you see if it is. Like, I think that opportunity is really, and that skill set is really needed, like you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking at red teaming. So when I first started this new company with Pyro, they didn't have quite a red team yet. So they were building it. So the cool thing is I got to do the blue team, run the SOC at the same time, actually run through pen test. So it's a pretty unique situation. Probably the first time I've ever danced on the fence between red and blue in one company. It's pretty interesting.
Nice.
So tell me about some of the code that you've written for Hack5 and some of their equipment. A lot of people, I'm sure, know the code that you've written and have experienced it and seen how well it works. So tell me your process and kind of some of your favorite code that you've written for the different types of equipment.
For Hack5 equipment specifically, or code in general?
Just in general.
So, oh man, NetView has to be my favorite executable that I ever wrote, because I am not a programmer by trade, and I wrote that thing way back. Oh man, like DerbyCon 2, I think DerbyCon 1, and we released it, me and Chris Gates, during that talk. And NetView actually was kind of a bit of the inspiration for PowerView, and so that was cool that Harmjoy kind of gave me the nod on that one. But the NetView, essentially what it did was, I found in MSDN the fact that enum users, I think is the API. It's been a long time since I've looked at that code. But there was, inside of MSDN, there was a piece of or a description saying, hey, if you set this flag and this flag, you have to be administrator. If you set this flag, you have to be administrator. This flag and this flag, you have to be administrator. And then way at the bottom, as a side note, it's like, if you set this to 100, you don't have to be administrator. And it's like, oh, okay, now I can enumerate everyone, and I can pull all this stuff, and I can like do all these things and get all the groups and all this stuff out of Active Directory, and the logged in, where they're logged in, all these different pieces of information. And it was just super exciting, and fumbling through C code and trying it, and then finally compiling it, seeing it work. I just, like I said, as a traditional software dev, I'm a script kiddie that doesn't quit, essentially. So I try code, whatever language it's in, and I think that it can work, and then I work towards that goal, and then I don't stop until I hit the goal, essentially. And that's the problem. Like, I hyper focus until it works. And so NetView was the result of that. And I think that a lot of people got a lot of good value out of it. And that hands down was the best feeling, when I could, put out some code that pen testers wanted to use and APT actors wanted to use and stuff like that. That was, a friend of mine actually told me that they found NetView inside of crimeware, and it was like, that's kind of cool. Like, not cool, but kind of cool. And
really cool.
And I don't know, like, I think that NetView was definitely one of them. I think that for Ducky, for Hack5 gear specifically, the conversation I had with Darren around the locked computer hack, and this was like, I think I've told this story before, but if not, this is the first time I'm telling it. I was using the USB Armory. It was a device that had awesome crypto on a little USB stick, but all it had was an Ethernet to your own computer, and it was a pain in the butt to get it to connect to the internet, to do any updates. It was a pain in the butt to use for every other aspect of life, it felt like. And I bought it at DEF CON, as we all do, buy these tools at DEF CON. And I was like, I have to find a use for this thing. This is not valuable to me. It sat on my shelf for like a year and a half. So I wanted to figure out a use for it. So I plugged it into my Windows machine, tried to get it to do updates, tried adding, responder to it to see if it'd do anything. And crazy thing is, I locked my computer, went upstairs to get a drink, came back downstairs, and Responder had gotten a hash from my computer while it was locked. And I was like, what the hell is this? So I wrote up a blog post on how I did it and stuff like that. And I saved it as a draft. I'm like, okay, so let's try this, in a couple other places. So I may or may not have gone to Walmart and Best Buy to see if locked computers also gave hashes that didn't have it pre-configured, because I didn't know if like it was just because it had been plugged into my machine before or whatever. So plugged it in, and then I essentially wrote the final blog post, posted it online, and went to sleep, went to bed, and like my phone went nuts. Like it got into the register, like it went, like people blew this thing up. And so I wake up in the morning and my phone has like 500 notifications, and it's been on the charger all night, but the battery's low. And like so the next morning I call up Darren, and he's actually in Lebanon, I think, for this thing with
The bank.
yeah, the bank.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, Darren, check this out, this is really cool. He's like, what if we had a turtle that could do storage and get all of these other things put together, and serial, and what if, and this was a total collaboration. Like he had idea, he was spitting back ideas too, and it was like, what if we had it do this and this, and this ducky could do that, and it had Ethernet and a better CPU and all this stuff. And he's like, that would work. And so like maybe a week after he got back, he had a prototype out and going, and it was awesome. And that was the Bash Bunny. And that and soon after the Bash Bunny came out, one of my unreleased favorite pieces of code is, you can look at Google zero, what is it called, the research arm of Google,
I know what you're talking about.
the security people that find all the bugs. I forget the name. Anyways, their blog post by one of their Windows Terando, or I'm horrible with names right now. Anyways, you look on his blog post, and he saw a blog, and he wrote a blog post about how when you boot up Windows, you can go into debug mode, and this is kernel debugging. And so it automatically turns on kernel debugging for COM1, which is a serial, which no one has, right? No one has a serial port anymore. Well, the Bash Bunny has serial. And so when you plug it in, it automatically becomes COM1. And so Project Zero, thank you so much, Kristen. You're awesome. And so when you plug in the Bash Bunny, it can be COM1. And so if you boot up a Windows machine and you hit F8 to go into kernel debugging mode, it has the kernel debugging mode as the machine is, turning on. And the great thing about kernel debugging is that you can do literally anything you want. And so the problem is that most of the software you need to do any Windows kernel debugging is in Windows, and it's Windows debug, right? And KDB. And so I wrote a horrible Python script on a Bash Bunny to connect to COM1 and send the connections, or the commands, over the kernel debugging COM1 port one by one, to change the registry key for sticky keys to cmd.exe, so that I can boot a machine that I have no access to, rewriting in memory, in kernel memory, where the registry is for sticky keys, get to the command prompt to log in, hit shift 5 times, and it works. And I reboot the machine, there's no registry change at all. And so awesome. With the Bash Bunny, I can get system on a box just by booting it up. Now, this doesn't work with hardware encryption, right? You have to get past that to do anything. But there's been blog posts since do hardware encryption. Anyways, so those are my favorite. Hack 5 code might be unreleased, but it's super easy to follow along. And then NetView being my favorite of all.
Yeah, Land Turtle is one of my favorite pieces of equipment to take on red team events. I was doing a pen test for a casino in the Midwest, and I accidentally left my Land Turtle sitting by my computer, but my computer was in the network admin's office. And so he didn't know what it was. He'd never seen one before. And he plugged it into his computer, and I came back in the room, and this is a casino. And he goes, "What is this piece of shit that you have laying on the table? It doesn't do anything. It looks like an Ethernet adapter." And I was like, "Well, yeah, it kind of is actually." And then so I took the Land Turtle and I dumped the loot, and I had everything I needed within the first 5 minutes of the test, and walked into the CISO's office, and I was like, this is maybe one reason why the Ukrainians beat up your casino. Plugging random shit into their computers, you know. But it was interesting to see what was floating around on that network. It ended up being not only, you know, user error, but also they had bad segmentation. You could actually get from the hotel Wi-Fi into the gaming center, which is really bad. Yeah.
So I actually have a similar turtle, or a similar turtle story with that too. We were doing a test, physical test, where we were having a really hard time getting into the facility. Like the guards were eyeing us the entire time. We were in the lobby. Like, I don't know what it was about us, but we couldn't like sneak around anywhere, and like they had patrols going on, and it was really frustrating. So we were getting to the end of the day. We had spent 12 hours trying to figure out how to get in. We get to the end of the day, we're sitting out in the lobby, just, you know, on our laptops looking at stuff, and we noticed that the network manager's door is propped open. Or not network manager, you just said network manager. The security manager's door is propped open, and it's outside of the security area of the desk and all that stuff, and it's actually around the corner. And so the door's open just a hair, and we think he went to the bathroom, but we don't know. And so we run in there, put our turtle into the back of it, and leave and go back and see if it connected. And so we're back in the hotel. It's definitely connected. We start doing our assessment, and like 2 a.m. rolls around, and this pissed off, like super mad point of contact calls us and says, "What the hell did you do to our network?" Just going off. And we're like, "Okay, we're just at the hotel. We're coming down. Let's talk this through." And he's like, "You changed all of our routing. Like, how did you get into our routers and switches? What did you do?" And we're like, we've gotten access and gotten, you know, domain stuff and whatever, but we haven't touched your router, the switches. "I don't believe you." Okay, how about we track back what we've done so far, and we can figure this out. Like, let's calm this down a little bit. Fine. We have everyone on call pulled in, and we've been looking through, and we have all the systems you have access to. But you messed with our routers and switches, and we can't find the system you're coming from to shut you down. We're like, we're coming from the security admin's like office. And he's like, "No, you're not. Like, this is why I don't believe you. Why you lying to me? Blah 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 blah." And so we're like, "We'll show you." And we go into the network, you got me in my head, network admin, the security admin's office. And he's like, "See, there's no way you're on this machine. He's gone on vacation. He's not even here. His machine is with him." And we're like, it's like our system is plugged into the docking station. And he just goes white. And he thought that because the docking station was the only thing there, that there's no possible way that we'd be coming from that port, right? From that Ethernet jack, like the docking station. And we had no idea that the guy had gone. Like, because we didn't notice any traffic. We weren't looking at the traffic coming through the turtle. We were just looking at our connection and talking to the rest of the network.
Mm-hmm.
And like the guy had, because docking stations always have power, right? Like the guy had jetted for some like 3-week vacation, and they had taken every network admin they had to scour the network for for changes in the routers, changes in the switches that meant that we were coming from a different port than the one he knew we couldn't be coming from.
Right.
And so I don't know how much overtime or whatever he had to, grovel to those network admins, because like he had, he had sworn up and down to them that there was no possibility for we were on that port.
Yes. One of the first mistakes I ever made with Responder was not forwarding the traffic, and ended up causing a lot of havoc. That was the first time I'd played with it. Luckily, it was on my own network, and just taking a look at it, and totally destroyed my network for a little bit. But yeah, those tools are great. One piece of code that I really enjoyed using was the remote PowerShell for the rubber ducky. I used so many iterations of that, where it went out to a web server and grabbed a specific PowerShell script and then executed it internally. There are so many networks that I was able to dance through just because of that small piece of code and a USB.
Nice.
Pretty amazing stuff. So tell me about Silicon Valley. I know that you were the tech consultant for the HBO production. What was that like?
Well, the question most people ask is, how did you get that gig? And it was literally just a friend of a friend, which was nice. So I haven't gotten any of those gigs since or before. But season 2, when I first started getting into it, it was a bit rough. You were basically on call for the entire recording season time. Wow. And because they're West Coast and I was East Coast, that meant I was getting calls at like 2 a.m. and asking about this comment or that comment, or this specific script item, or that this idea. And it was a little frustrating, but it was super awesome to be part of it, right? And then the premiere happens. I didn't know TV shows had premieres, but they do. And I got to go to that. That was amazing. And then season 3 got way more in depth with security stuff, with the new character. I actually got to design her kind of from the ground up.
Nice.
Which was really cool. But it was all mostly remote. I never actually talked to anybody but one point of contact for the scripting stuff, and maybe 2. It was all mostly remote. And then season 4, season 5, they may have pinged me once or twice the whole time for those 2 seasons. So I didn't really get involved in those. And I was kind of feeling like kind of bad for having my name in the the credits, because I really didn't do anything those 2 times. But season 6, the final season, has to be the funnest time that I had. I got to go on set. Nice. I got to meet all the actors. I got to actually sit in the writing room and help design how the show would end. And that was so cool.
That's pretty awesome.
And yeah, I got to meet Mike Judge and all the other writers and directors and stuff, and sit with them and spitball ideas and how and see how that works. And yeah, I don't know, the show was awesome, and I loved how strict they were about like getting things right, and possible and real. And like, even if I hemmed and hawed in the writer's room a little bit, like I'm like, yeah, that could happen, but it would, and they're like, nope, okay, next idea. It was really cool that they were so stringent about it. But I got to put a few words in season 2 specifically for Hack 5. Oh, and Hack 5 actually was in season 3 too, right? I think.
Yep.
And the the School of Root one, I'm really proud of getting that mention in there. But like, it was a really interesting experience. The only downside is they don't pay you much for those kind of things.
Right.
So even as a senior technical advisor, like as cool as that title is, I got paid $1,200 for the whole season.
I think it's more getting your name in history and part of the
Yeah,
production. I have a
true,
couple
but
friends that did that have some really cool stories, and I'm just fascinated with that, how people can go from tech to Hollywood. I know another guy who did the same thing, and was working on the set with the movie Snowden, which was pretty amazing. But I just, at some point, I would like to see what that's like. It looks really interesting. And, I know that Hollywood gets it wrong most of the time. And I think it's
Mhm.
really cool they're actually reaching out to people who work in that field and
Yeah.
getting advice. I think that's awesome. So what would be your dream job? If you could build your own job from the ground up, what would your dream job be?
um, I actually saw my dream job while I was still in the Marine Corps. So this guy who uh, showed up at my work in the Marine Corps as
Mhm.
a contractor. Um, he showed up and did 150 pages of documentation for a project he had never seen before,
Mhm.
and did it amazing, um, and left. And so and I talked to him, and he actually is the one that fixed my resume up so that it got me jobs really fast. And I've shared that resume quite a few times, because it was really amazing, the little tweaks and nods in there.
Mhm.
Um, but he and I sat down and we had a really long conversation about like jobs and stuff, because I was getting ready to get out. And his job is essentially he's the go-to um, for anything. And like, so he gets put on jobs where no one else can get it done, and he just does it and fixes it and leaves. Um,
The fixer.
and so I'm sorry.
The fixer.
Yeah, he's an infosec fixer.
Nice.
And so I would love to be someone who gets hired to come in, be fully autonomous, have the backing of, like, when he came in, he had the backing of the Commandant of the Marine Corps. Like
Wow.
that was his signature, right? Um, and so no one screwed with him. No one, said you couldn't do this, you can't do that, or didn't give him what he needed for his job. And I would love to be like that. And it was really cool because um, he would come in and listen and learn, and he was never above anyone
Mhm.
when like he talked to anyone. And he came in and literally just would fix it, whatever it was, and come in and just get it done. And so one of the, like, I don't know, like that that would be my dream job, where I could come in and sit with whoever it was, learn all of the problems of whatever they were doing with. I would sit with, entry level people. And if you know anything about the military, you know that there's the Lance Corporal Network, or whatever it's called in the Navy, at,
Mhm.
the E1, E2, E3 level, where they know all the problems,
Mhm.
and everyone above them just covers up the problems, right? That's how management works in any organization, military or not, right? Well, it shouldn't, but like that's the joke.
Yeah.
And so um finding out where all the problems are of the frontline employees, the people who have actually the problems that you have to deal with, and coming in and having the backing of the commandant or the CEO, and just fixing it and saying, okay, these are the people who make you money. I'm going to make their life better,
Mhm.
make it easier, whatever. And I'm just going to solve it and go. And then I'll move on to the next one. That would E4 Mafia in the army. Yeah. Um, that is my dream job.
I
Where I
can
can,
I can definitely see that. The one thing I miss about the military is, you always knew what to expect, and you always knew what was expected. I think that's one thing that we lack in the industry is that expectation and accountability. I think a lot of places fail.
Accountability, yes,
I think a lot of people.
100% on that last part.
Yeah.
I think that there are way too many people in infosec that get away with freaking murder, and they get paid. Yeah, yeah. So there was a video I saw the other day. It was like, so you get a bonus for doing your job, but you also get paid for doing your job. So what's the bonus for? And like, it just really sunk into me, like, holy crap, I get paid this much money no matter what I do on my job.
Mm-hmm.
And if I kill myself trying to do better, I will maybe get a bonus, but it'll be probably the same bonus I would have gotten if I didn't do that, right?
Exactly.
And so, I mean, it's insane the how money works in the US. It's just weird.
Yeah, definitely weird. And you can always tell when I walk into a security department or any company, cybersecurity, it doesn't matter. I can always tell who has been military and who hasn't. And you can tell which management executives run their ship like they did the military. And I respect that. You know, a lot of people hate it. Oh, you know, it's too stringent, it's too strict, and, you know, it can't go outside the lines. But, you know, a lot of people function really well in those environments, and those environments run very smoothly. Well, up until this year, I guess. But, you know, like that would be my dream job. If I could take my job as it is now and put a uniform on, that would be my dream job. Because I miss that camaraderie and I miss that, you know, that fellowship or whatever. But I guess my job was a little bit different in the military, working in the haircut and working in a skiff all the time. That was sometimes a little bit isolating. You know, working in crypto, it was, you know, I never worked in a building with windows until after I got out.
What's a skiff, by the way? What's a skiff?
It's a secret, what was it? Sensitive compartmental information facility or
it's
something.
It's a vault that you actually work in.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Sounds great.
No, it's not.
They literally have a Marine standing outside the door at most skiffs. Yeah. It's one of those places that
it's
if it gets
a cold ass
compromised,
room that doesn't get any air other than the AC, and it's freezing as hell.
Cold and no windows, and noisemakers so that nobody can hear what you're saying. It's a different way of life. But again, you know, I knew what to expect, and I knew what was expected. And it's usually a lot more than what I could give, but I busted my ass trying to give it to them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, things like that. I think that would be a great job, but I envy the people coming into cybersecurity now. We were just talking about this earlier with Robert Hansen. And what's funny is when I got into cybersecurity, there was no classes. There were no certifications. There was no CEH.
Oh, come on. There were certifications.
Well, not cybersecurity certifications.
The CEH has been around since the dawn of time.
Since 2000.
You can tell.
I've been around since the dawn of time.
Yeah, no, the CEH was last updated like when the I love you virus was around.
Yeah, it's sad. I took version 1, and that was in 2005. I got into cybersecurity, what's now cybersecurity, back in the early 2000s. And we didn't have, back then, penetration testing was something that they were thinking about, but they didn't actually have like a whole career field around it. And they didn't have college university courses regarding ethical hacking or pen testing. But I think that, you know, people coming into cybersecurity now have it made. I mean, look at all of the information and knowledge that's shared between everybody.
Right.
It's crazy.
Which is awesome.
It's out there if you want it.
Yeah. The problem is that the blue side of thing hasn't gotten there yet.
Yep.
Offense, we're sharing all kinds of stuff. But I don't think the defenders understand that the more sharing that happens, the better you get, and it shows in offense. And I think the offensive security tool debate is missing that aspect of it, right? Like I think that that yes, the more offensive people share things, the more tools that are going against the blue team. I get that aspect and it sucks, but I think the problem isn't that there's so many offensive tools out there that it's hard to keep up. I think that the blue teams keep their siloed information and try and keep up individually. And
does this go back to the thing where understanding the red team is more important than when you come across to the blue, like understanding how you can be attacked will benefit in how you defend?
Yeah, I think it's very important for that to happen. However, so the debate is that there's too much to keep up with on the blue side of things.
Yeah, okay.
And so I envision that there's like a bunch of castles, these different businesses, right? And each business is trying to hire the best, defenders or the best, knights, right? And then you have this Mongol horde of offensive people that are all sharing how to get into different, castles, and they're all sharing their information. They're different tribes and different, red teams and stuff, but they're all sharing how to do better. And the problem is that each one of the castles are not getting better because there's not enough blue teamers to go around, right? And so you have to, your knight might be better than the other knight, but they're not going to be better than the entirety, the shared mindset of the horde of Mongols sitting out there. And I have nothing against Mongols. I'm just using, history as
a great
thing,
analogy,
right?
It's a good analogy.
Right. And so I think that the more the blue teams could share of how they defend and getting software and tooling out there, I think would be awesome. I cannot wait to see blue teams share and use the internet in a way. So the power of the internet is that there's so much information out there, right? And this goes to the training aspect of it. So there's plenty of classes where, SOC analyst 101 classes and all these things, right? It's awesome. But actual good defense, right? Where you're saying, hey, do the basics, which is a really a trope that I so much hate right now. Like how you can have all of these defenders that are trying their best to do defense, but there's so much bad knowledge out there. There's so much
misinformation.
Not just misinformation, but like so misinformation is intentional. But I think that the defense is so hard because there's not good information out there. There's not leaders. So most of the leaders in blue side of things, they don't publish tools like in offense, right? They don't put out, other than a few, right? I'll take that back. There are a few that publish tools, but if there were really good tools out there and easy to use tools, that's the other thing. Easy to use tools do not exist on the blue team.
No.
I've tried them. They don't exist.
Very true.
And so I think if blue side started hive minding and putting out like super easy to use, like Metasploit easy, right? To use defensive tools, then I think that we would be much more on an even playing field. And, one of the things that we developed at Uber that I love, and I can't wait till more blue teams kind of create, is rules from scratch. So what we did was we took all of MITRE, just like everyone on the planet has been doing, and we wrote a tool that would basically run the command to do attack simulation stuff, right? Just like everyone else is doing these days, we're hundreds of thousands of dollars. But we integrated it into our detection platform. And so we weren't seeing when these attack simulations went off, because what it would do is it would run the thing, and then the tool would then check to see where in the alerting process it was, and then check to see if it got to an alert. And if it got to an alert, then it would remove the alert. It would say, yep, triage, done, go away. And that was such a fast process that we were doing hundreds per minute.
Wow.
And so
Huge.
it would check all of the different MITRE things randomly going through, and we'd add new rules and new checks every so often and say, hey, check this, check this, check this, check that. And just, we built our own rule set based on the MITRE stuff that built into that. And that was collaboration. That was a big collaboration between a bunch of people. So I can't take credit for the idea or the code, but once we had that, we were essentially hunting all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Literally all, like, automated hunting all the time, based on every MITRE thing that we could make a rule for. And so that kind of code got released as meta directly from Uber, but it was so restricted to like what we could release of that no one's really benefiting from it. No one really knows that code anymore, right? And so stuff like BlueCon, which is happening this weekend.
Where's that at, by the way?
That's in Chicago. That's kind of the start. There's been other blue team conferences, but we need a DEF CON for blue teams.
Exactly.
Right.
Totally.
To where you're sharing stuff all the time, and not SANS or RSA, or where vendors, have, a chokehold on everything that's taught. Right. But yeah. So I went on a tirade. Sorry.
That's okay. So I have a question for you. When I look at the defense platforms we have now, as opposed to the early days like IntraShield and some of the more archaic platforms, it seems it seems to me like we, on the blue side, there hasn't been that much advancement as far as the technology. Yeah, we do have like machine learning and pseudo kind of AI stuff going on with like dark trace and stuff like that. But when you look at the overall industry on the blue side, it's not much different than what it was back then. Yeah, you have some more automation, but you still have as many false positives. And that part, I'm left scratching my head all the time trying to figure that out. I could walk into any environment and look at their defenses and look at the platforms that they're using, and more than likely, I'm going to see at least 75% is noise.
Yep. And that's why, that's why we created that stuff called Meta at Uber, is because all of the tooling that we had already was just, alerts going a million miles a second. And so we started from scratch. We wrote rules from scratch that were based on our environment and MITRE and how we applied it there. We didn't like Ryan, nice to catch up with you. You had to go. The thing that we found at Uber was that it was really, really hard to try and keep up with those alerts and logs and stuff. And so we started from scratch, and that's a very scary thing, I understand, but I think that, just to be honest, I think most people have really crappy alerts and
totally agree. Totally agree. And some of the recommendations on some of these platforms too, when an alert pops up, block IP address. I'm like, wait a minute, that's so archaic. Why are we recommending to block an IP address in 2021? It slays me when I see stuff like that.
Yeah.
But some of the machine learning stuff is kind of cool. We had a guy from Dark Trace on, Max Hennemeyer, and we were talking about, the state of the industry and what AI is, what AI isn't. Really interesting conversation. But one thing that I think the blue side fails at as an industry is what you're talking about, information sharing. And I think that is related to the whole don't want to admit that your baby's ugly type deal. When it comes to compromises, you get little to no information from companies when they get compromised, because first of all, they don't want to give away how weak they are or how the attacker took advantage of them. And if they have strong defenses, they don't want to release that either. And to me, that kind of defeats the purpose, because I think as an industry, we kind of need to work together, because how I'm going to get attacked today is how you're going to get attacked tomorrow. And to me, when you look at whose baby's uglier, it really doesn't matter. You got to work together. I'd like to see that. I think you're right on track with that. The blue side needs to share more information and more tooling. To be honest with you, I haven't seen a lot of tooling when it comes to blue team. I remember back in the day when Snort IDS was really popular and everybody was using Snort, and people were writing signatures and getting involved with that. I think that's the max of the extent that I've seen blue sides working together, sharing that type of information and hashes and stuff like that. That to me is important, but you don't see enough of it. So question about the red team side. Sure. I've seen a couple platforms already that have, they tout automated pen testing. I have my own qualms with the idea of automation when it comes to pen testing, but I'd like to hear your opinion on that.
No such thing. That's my idea on it. So security comes in, offensive security comes into multiple forms, right? The first one is vulnerability scanning management, automation there. You also have SAST and DAST scanning, where your software security is looking for vulnerabilities like Dependabot from GitHub and that kind of thing, right?
White hat.
Yep. So all of the automated stuff is awesome, and it's great that it can go through code and go through systems and find stuff. Rumble's another great one for doing asset discovery, right? Like all of that automation is fantastic. But red teaming or pen testing, right? Pen testing, you can call, like, I don't care what your definition is or whatever. I mean, I care what your definition is, but I don't care what a definition of it is. I think that it's all art when you come to when you actually get to the people part of things. There's no science to it. You can beat your head against a wall 500 times and finally get in because you guessed the right password or you guessed the right URL, and there isn't a system on the planet that's going to be able to handle every intricacy that goes along with that. It just is, it's too much of an art. And that's one of the big problems with red teaming is because it's an art, there's no way to measure it, right? Metrics don't exist for red teaming, that not in a valuable way, where you can say, I found 7 vulnerabilities this week. Cool. I found 1 the next week, but it was, way worse than the 7 other ones the other day. And they were all critical, but like this one was worse because it was so easy. Like there just isn't good ways of doing that. So automated pen tests, just to get back to it, I don't think really exist. I think, sure, you can do, attacker emulation stuff, attack simulation stuff, where you're, running through the MITRE framework and hitting a bunch of things like we were talking about earlier. That's not an automated pen test. You're doing that kind of stuff. Your action. There's too much people involved, right? To be able to do that. Like, how is a computer going to know that, this person is going to write a passwords.xls here tomorrow because they had it in an email that they have to write it because a customer asked for it in the specific share, right? Like, that's too much abstraction and putting patterns together for a computer to kind of do yet, obviously.
Absolutely.
I'm just saying, like, it's not, it doesn't exist.
One thing I would like to see pen testing get automated with is reporting. That was the big thing that I really hated was reporting. You spend all these hours painting this picture, and I like what you said about being an art, because what I found is interviewing people for red team jobs and looking at people that are already in an industry. Most of them have a creative side, whether it be they play music or they write or they paint. There's always some artistic aptitude with every pen tester I've ever seen. And you're right, it is an art. But one art that I would like to get rid of would be the report writing. That is the most mundane part of red teaming that I think exists right now.
So I think report writing came out of the fact that red teamers and pen testers at the time didn't know a better form to do that in, and report writing can be so much easier and so much better. So what I developed at a few different places that I worked was reporting through slides, and essentially it's just a timeline / like story, and all of the findings, all of the detection opportunities, all the different pieces that we worked with, those all became tickets or items or emails to individuals and groups. And it was a conversation about things. It wasn't like, here you go fix this. It was like, hey, found this thing in your thing. I think this is a good way to fix it. What do you think? Let's, work through this. And so the higher ups got their slide deck of all the pretty lights and numbers and colors and stuff, where it has, reds and greens of good and bad. And then the people who actually do things, got tickets or whatever they could handle. Because giving someone a Word document, a PDF, it's incredibly hard to parse that into a ticketing system or an Excel document or something they can track it in, right? And so when you meet them where they are, like put it in ticketing systems, put it in their, tracking system or their, Trello board or whatever they have for, however they're managing their day, then it becomes something they can actually implement and actually get fixed and actually get kudos for closing the ticket. Like when you work with people enough to find out what makes their life tick, work life tick, then red teaming reporting becomes so much easier, and you customize it per the client or customer or target. Yeah, and then you don't have to write a 40-page report.
Exactly. Have you seen PlexTrack by any chance?
I have.
I heard that there's a certain level of not really automation, but it's easier to compile reports with red teaming through PlexTrack.
They also have ticket integration as well.
Oh, really? Like Salesforce, or how does that work?
Salesforce and ServiceNow and all those other ticketing, Jira and stuff.
Yeah, we use Jira at work. I think that's pretty interesting, and we just pulled on PlexTrack, which I think is going to make everybody's job a lot easier. But you're right, as far as like actual hands-on and vulnerability validation and actual, the creativity of the red teaming and pen test, I don't think there's a platform that can duplicate that. And what I found too, and this is kind of strange. So I was doing some work with the London Met Police on their cyber prevent program, helping do interventions with, teenagers and kids that have been identified as potential cyber criminals. One of the things that I found really interesting was about 90% of them are on the spectrum, the autism spectrum. And, looking at the industry now and looking at some of the people that I grew up with in the industry, myself included, I think that we all fit that norm somehow. I don't think it's that unusual, but it really surprised me to see the numbers. Would you say that that's pretty accurate, or have you experienced that?
I have no idea. Yeah. I mean, I've never been diagnosed with ADHD or anything like that, but when I watch videos about people who have ADHD, I have similar feelings / experiences, like hyperfocus and trouble tracking tasks and all these other things, right? But I just from talking to people, a lot of people have ADHD or Asperger's and stuff like that too. So I would agree with your summation, but I don't know. I'm not a doctor.
Yeah, it was really interesting to see that, and I think the kids were getting locked into this loop where they didn't really understand. The youngest kid I think I dealt with was like 10 or 11 years old, and their thinking is a lot different than ours, of course. But one way that I related to him as far as like cybercrime goes, and you've probably heard this before, when you walk by a house and the window's open, that doesn't mean you can climb through the window. And so that's what some of the kids, talking to them and explaining to them what penetration testing was, what was a legal, scope agreement, what was a legal statement of work. Once those kids got a hold of that knowledge and started putting it to use, along with the skills that they already had, they made for some really awesome pen testers.
I bet.
And just seeing the kids these days with the skills that they have just blows me away. Absolutely blows me away. So let's talk about Nova for a second before we wrap things up.
Sure.
I know that you're co-founder of Nova, and I've known a couple people that have been part of Nova. Why don't you explain what Nova is to the people who don't know, and maybe some of the listeners in that area might get interested.
Sure. So Nova Hackers started as me being incredibly lonely in the InfoSec space. Honestly, I heard about DEF CON groups. I went to a local Arlington DEF CON group, and it was like not awesome. It was like 2 people, 3 people that showed up, and I'm still friends with some of them, but it was not fun, right? So I wanted to have a little bit more fun with people, and I was working in a skiff at the time over in DC area, the Pentagon, and I'm like, hey, like anyone in Northern Virginia who wants to meet up and have lunch, and we'll just have lunch, and we'll meet at LaFont Plaza and have lunch. And I got 15, 16, 17 people saying, sure, I'll be there. Not one showed up. I went there all by myself, had lunch at a small little restaurant there, and kind of was like defeated and went back to my job, and I was not happy. Well, I got pinged by a few people saying, hey, when's the next one? And I'm like, there ain't gonna be a next one. You suck. And so I'm like, okay, let's next month we'll do another one, and that way people have more time to kind of go. And so I set one up again, and I got a bunch of people saying, yeah, definitely be there. Yeah. LaFont Plaza again. I show up a little early, and Chris Gates gets there. Carl Onage shows up, and he's like, where's everyone at? And he's like 10 minutes late. And I'm like, you're it. Like that's it. And that was the first time I actually met him. And we sat down and had lunch, and he and I were the first ones to ever go to this lunch, and then it spawned off of that, and we talked about what more and more people came the following month and the following month after that, and we got to a decent sized group where we were having lunch, and we were having to rent space to have lunch, and we decided we needed some rules, and so we saw that Austin Hackers Association had some really cool rules where basically it was, hey, if you haven't been here before, you're presenting tonight. If you haven't presented recently, you're presenting tonight. If you're not contributing to the group, you're gone. And we really love those rules. I think that it created an environment where people felt safe sharing because they knew that other people would share, right? And so it also was Chatham House rules. For those who don't know, that means that anything said in those meetings can't leave those meetings. Right. And so it kind of grew from there, and it is now 700 plus people, from all walks of life and all over the planet now, because people have moved and changed jobs and stuff like that. And I think we're actually past 1,000.
Wow.
But we still have meetings once a month. Mostly been virtual. We've gone to in-person / hybrid recently. But essentially what it is and we've gotten to the point where you don't have to present the first night. You can come show up, but if you start leeching and not presenting or not giving back, then we're going to kick you out. And so the great thing is that we've had presenters talk about anything, everything. We had someone give a presentation on how to make good coffee, like with what the good, what a good coffee maker is, and how to hack the coffee maker to, to remove limiters and do this French press with, with a Raspberry Pi. Nice. Amazing talks like that. But we've also had like talks where this like, I think he was 23-year-old still in college, talked about 0 days in RSA, and like really valuable 0 days in RSA. And he was giving the presentation there, and we're like, go make, like, we were stopping him from presenting and saying, go make money on this. Like, these are $1 million bugs, go make money. And he's like, well, yeah, like, dude, you're 23 years old. $1 million in your bank account is going to set you.
Exactly.
But we've also had people show up who wanted to get part of the group, just to get us to hack stuff. And we had someone that I had to pull off stage and kick out that night that was trying to get, us to hack the Chinese government medical records. But it's been a great experience, a really great group. There's zero tolerance for BS. And which is one of the nice things is like, your membership is reliant on you not being a dick, in a lot of definitions, and it's great. That's what Nova Hackers is. And it's a good group of people.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've known a couple people who passed through there. Actually, Arsenic and I were talking about it earlier. He said that was one of the most intense talks that he gave, because he was talking about JavaScript. And I guess HD Moore was sitting in the audience, and it was basically the same type of code, and that's how he got introduced to the whole thing. But yeah, it's a really good group. AHA is still going too, I believe.
Yep, it is. And the other good thing about Nova Hackers and AHA is that it's not a traditional presentation. You're giving a talk, and it's a conversation. You can be mid-sentence and someone's like, that's not right, or you should have done it this way. And it breeds the confidence, right? Because you know that those people are not there to heckle you. I mean, when I'm on stage, or when someone, who's been around in the group for a long time has been on stage, I get nothing but heckles. But it's a safe space, and that's what's really cool, is like, no matter gender, race, color, creed, whatever, it's a super safe space for you to give your presentation, and you can end your presentation halfway and be like, I'm kind of stuck here, and there will be at least 4 people who are experts in that field of whatever you're researching that will say, have you tried this, have you looked at that, have you done this? And it's awesome. Like, in July, right before DEF CON, we get, like, the entire meeting is all pre-talks for people practicing their talk for DEF CON. It's great.
Nice. That's awesome. So I'll open it up for questions really quick. Kristen, do you have any questions for Rob?
Definitely do.
Go for
it. So my first question is, I think I know the answer because I did some research, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I really liked your take on it. What do you consider your biggest success in either career or life?
My kids. Like, just the fact that they're still alive. Like, I'm doing a pretty good job there. Actually, my wife's doing most of the work there, to be honest. But yeah, that's definitely my biggest thing in life right now. Career wise, oh man, I would have told you separate things previous to this job, but getting the chance to lead and be a director of a red team and see if my ideas of what a real director or a manager of a red team would do, and seeing if they work, and putting all those plans that I had in implementation and seeing how they do. That's, I guess, my biggest career thing is getting this job and getting that chance.
Awesome.
Big step. Any more, Kristen?
Yeah, so I noticed that you're a coach for the Mid-Atlantic CCDC.
Yep.
And you credited that to like where you learned most of or a lot of your red team like tactics techniques. Can you talk a bit about that and what it is and who can be involved?
So the Mid-Atlantic region of the Cyber Collegiate Defense Competition, which is a mouthful, but it's basically a collegiate or college level competition that any college student, young or old, as long as you're enrolled in classes and in undergrad or graduate, you can join the CCDC team of that school or start your own. Because at Western Governors University, the college that I go to, we actually started our own team recently, restarted because it had a team prior. But essentially what happens is every year around December, January timeframe, you get calls from the national region or the national setup, national CCDC, which is the main hub of all these things, to sign up for your region with a team, and you specify what your team is and stuff like that. And so that team then goes to qualifiers, and that qualifiers, hi Kitty, that qualifiers goes, and you basically get put in a room or in a cyberspace in virtual world because of COVID, where you have to defend a network that is a new or it's a company that has been. So the general scenario for all regions is there's a company that you've just been hired on as the new IT staff, and the IT staff before you all got fired, and because they had all kinds of vulnerabilities and everything. So you get this network that you have no idea what the state of it is. You don't know if it's working or not. You don't know if it's vulnerable or not, patched or not, which it probably is or isn't. And you have to put this network back together, fix it, and patch it, all while a real enterprise level red team, like a group of volunteers that are trying to attack your network and make your services go down, that are your business's blood. And so your services go down where you lose points, and points are all based on services. They're also based on your interaction with this fictitious CEO. So it teaches really cool experiences with management, and some places like the Mid-Atlantic region, we have an actual CEO, a real CEO of a company, coming in and talking to these kids, and you get face-to-face interaction with a real CEO as if you were an IT manager. And so that experience alone is worth its weight in gold, because you get to learn all of what a CEO expects and wants and knows. And so there's that aspect of it too. So you get scoring based on your interactions with the CEO and your answers to them. And then you also get scoring based on sometimes a orange team, which is your user base. So
that's pretty awesome.
So it's a really cool experience. And from the red team side of things, I got to learn all of my tactics, because there's two aspects of CCDC that you can't find anywhere in corporate world or even government world, where you can, because it's an open-ended network, and there's a lot of different disparate systems, but there's no rules. If I take down a system during CCDC, that's an oops, right? If I take down a system in real world, that's you're fired.
Oops. Yeah.
And so if I build my malware for CCDC, and it doesn't work in CCDC, it's because I got a chance to try it out. The other big thing about CCDC is that there's no rules for the red team, right? There's very little rules. But there's also the amazing aspect of it that I don't think people understand as much unless you've been in CCDC as a red teamer, is that there are not enough systems in most CCDC networks. So each one of the blue teamers is looking directly at that system, like having Task Manager or PS List open, having all the network connections in Wireshark, which will never happen in the real world, right? But as a red teamer, you have to be invisible to that. And if I can be invisible to that, I'm going to stomp around a real network all I want, right? If I can be invisible to someone staring at me directly in front of my face, right? Then in real engagements, I can back it off a bit even and be fine, right? And so that's the power of learning to do red teaming at CCDC, is that you become a amazing red teamer for anything outside of CCDC.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Denton College in Texas, UNT, University of North Texas, has something similar. I don't know if it's CCDC, but they have kind of a cyber competition, same thing. And they bring in Air Force guys to work on the red team against the college students. Same concept. It's kind of cool. I participated, I guess it was about 7 or 8 years ago. But those types of competitions, I think, are awesome for kids in school and anybody who's really studying cybersecurity.
Everyone gets good experiences out of it. Like it's great.
Absolutely. So, Rob, do you have any questions for us?
I think there's one more question from user example in the chat. Okay. What was your favorite tool to build and why? You asked that earlier, but one of the things that that I didn't talk about is recent tools. And one of the things about me is that I get nerd sniped very easily. If someone else on my team or one like, hey Rob, have you seen this file before? I'll be like, no, let me dig in for 15 hours and figure out what this file is.
Rabbit hole.
Like that is my downfall. Like anyone on the internet, if you can hear this right now or listen to this later and you're like, hey, I don't know what this file is on this red team assessment, hey, I'll just ping Mubix and he's gonna dig into it and tell me how this is. Don't do that, please. That's mean. But I have been really digging into crypto specifically. Crypto is really frustrating to me because if you don't know every aspect of the crypto you're trying to decrypt, you can't do it. Like, yep. It's not a game that works very well with. And so recently I dug into Manage Engine, and Manage Engine has some really interesting crypto. And one of the cool things about it is that it uses DES, which hasn't been used in forever, but it still uses DES for its encryption. But it uses PGP on top of the DES. So it does DES first and then wraps it around with another PGP thing. But it does it using a static key inside of Postgres. And Postgres has direct interaction with GPG, specifically it's symmetric encryption and decryption. And so Op Engine has to use Postgres because it uses the PGP stuff inside of directly inside of Postgres. And so when I was decrypting this, I learned a ton of stuff, like the fact that I didn't know that JDB was a thing, Java debugger was a thing, because I'm not a software dev, but attaching to a giant project like operations manager, and being able to, like I've done GDB before, but like I was able to get into JDB and, say this function, like the decrypt function, I want to, put a breakpoint on. Like it never occurred to me that Java had the same stuff as like C, debuggers did. And so I dug into that, trying to figure out this crypto, finally, found the commands it was doing and all of the different things, and found out the crypto key for it was Mickey. And so I got like a million miles deep into this crypto, and finally figured out how to decrypt the passwords that were in Op Engine. So I made a tool that did it with Python, and it was a really simple script. Like it doesn't show all the effort that went into like figuring all of this out, but it's like a 15-30 line script. And then I noticed that just looking through the script, I could do everything inside of CyberChef. And so inside of so I made a tool called Manage to Decrypt with a 2 instead. And so inside I show, okay, here's the tools and here's how they work, but here's how to do it in CyberChef. Like it's literally like 2 or 3 things for each decryption and encryption.
That's pretty awesome.
So I'm super proud of the tool, even though it's like, and I just posted a link to it, but like
Cool.
because it is so simple, but it's crypto, and it's only simple once you know everything about it. And knowing everything about it is the hardest part.
Yeah. So you really have to have a love for crypto in order to be good at it. I find that out really quick when I got into cryptography in the military. It's one of those things that's been around since the beginning of time. And different algorithms and methods are so vast and so deep. If you're into crypto, Rob, there's a good book called The Code Book by Simon Singh. I'm actually reading that right now. It's really good. It goes over the history of encryption, decryption, different types of code and ciphers and stuff.
Okay.
So
I'll check it out.
Cool. So do you have any questions for us as a group or individuals or anything?
I would say as a group, to your listeners or the people on the call right now, what would you say the hardest part of your job is right now? What is the one thing that makes it, and it can be your job, it can be red teaming, blue teaming, it could be whatever aspect of InfoSec you want to pick, but what is the one thing that really gets under your skin and it makes things hard?
I think that the most difficult for me, being a manager of a SOC, is helping clients that have been struck with ransomware. Just because there's a lot of emotion involved.
I got a solution for that.
So the hard part for me is the emotion, right?
Yep.
Because you really can't understand the emotion unless you're in that position.
Yep.
And with neurodiversity, that can be a little bit difficult at times.
Yep, exactly.
But
empathy is hard.
It's very hard. I think for any human, empathy can be difficult. But knowing that they're in a pressure point and knowing their solutions to help them, but it doesn't match. Like you don't know when to jump in and say, hey, I know that there's a platform I can help you with this, but it's going to cost. To me, like helping somebody in that situation and trying not to sound like a salesman, I think is the most difficult part of the job. The easiest part of the job is the people part. I think the people that I work with and that are on my team, I have a great team. And really in cybersecurity and InfoSec in general, it's all about relationships. It's such a small world. And if you can build those good lasting relationships, you'll run into those people at least 100 times during your career. So I think that's the easiest part.
Can I give you the solution to ransomware?
Absolutely.
It's 100% solution. Ready for this? It's
sure.
RSA ready.
That's
Stop
it?
giving them Windows machines.
No, 100%. I
like
wish
so everything like 99.9% of the things people use today are all web-based, right?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Right. So you give them a Chromebook and you stop worrying about ransomware, right? Literally, that's the solution, right? And so we actually did this at a company that I worked at. We were having a big ransomware, or we were having malware issues all up and down this one section of our business. And no one in this business used anything but our web interfaces, except for a few people who needed a Windows machine for like CAD and stuff. And so we gave everyone Chromebooks, replaced everyone in there, and we stopped getting infections like overnight. And so I know this sounds radical, but you can join Chromebooks to MDM and you can manage them through SSO. Like this is a possible thing these days. And so if you have the, and they're cheaper too, they're just hands down way cheaper. So sell it to your finance people, say, hey, we're gonna shift this thing in IT and we're gonna give them all Chromebooks. And we're gonna give anybody who doesn't absolutely need a Windows machine a Chromebook. If they don't absolutely need a Mac, they get a Chromebook. If they don't absolutely need, and they have to say why. and you tell finance first, and you say, hey, finance, we're gonna save you millions of dollars over time, and they're gonna be all about it, and they're gonna force it down everyone's throat, which makes it so much easier on InfoSec. And then ransomware goes away because Chromebooks are least privilege, right? Yeah. You can't, like, the best you can do on a ransomware Chromebook is kill, the Google synced stuff, right? And that's all going to be, automatically detected on Google's cloud and unransomwared. Sure. And so it's like, anyways,
that's
sorry.
A good point. No, that's a good point. Actually, I hadn't thought about that. I thought about thin clients before, but even that, has inherent risk when you're dealing with thin clients. But Chromebook, that's actually a good point. I bought one of those for my kid at one point, and you're right.
It's effective, and 100%. Cheaper,
100%.
And you can manage it for SSO. You can do all the stuff that you need to. Like it has everything you need. The only thing it doesn't have, and anything that's Windows based, you can use Amazon Workspaces for.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And Amazon Workspaces you can blow away. And so I have my mom use a Chromebook, and she uses Amazon Workspaces that I've set up for her only when she needs something for Windows, and it automatically does everything that it needs. So it's awesome.
That is awesome.
End users not understanding awareness is important. Luke, this is another one of my soapboxes. End users should not be liable for any awareness of InfoSec. It's not their job to know InfoSec. Let's stop telling them it's their job and do a better job at defending. We have to point fingers back at ourselves and say, I have worked at companies where phishing was not a problem. And that's because we made it so that no matter what the user did, we caught it, right? And so they could, click on a phishing link all day, every day, and it didn't do anything. And so that's where we need to get to as an industry. Stop blaming the users. I'm not trying to pick on you, but we need to get off of the end user awareness stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they were hired for a specific function, and it definitely wasn't cybersecurity.
Right, like maintenance guys in the car bay don't expect me to know how to change a tire, right? Like they're like, where's the user awareness for people doing my job? Like, we don't do that. InfoSec's the only job where we expect other people to do our job for us.
I would say replace the expectation of users to know cybersecurity and awareness. I would say replace that with build relationships between groups.
Absolutely.
The siloed, structure of most companies doesn't work well when it comes to collaboration and sharing information. And that will make any security professional's job a lot easier if they just build gaps, build bridges over gaps between groups.
And Alex said the people want to cyber secure their business without spending, even though fines and ransom is even more expensive. Yes, but the problem exists because people spend too much money, because defensive companies charge too much money because they can, and they get away with it. And we need to stop spending millions and billions of dollars on defense companies that just don't do anything.
And they still get nabbed with ransomware anyways.
Yep.
And then they spend more money. Cyber insurance, we were talking about that on the last episode as well. And the insurance companies working with specific IR teams, incident response teams, and forensics teams, you can always tell which groups have relationships with the cybersecurity companies, the insurance companies, because the first thing out of their mouth is, we've contacted the attacker and they want X amount of dollars. Well, not really worried about that right now. Let's see if we can't get back into operation. Then we'll worry about the ransom. But you can always tell who's in bed with the insurance companies for sure. So I think that's about it. I'm going to wrap it up. Okay. Rob, I really appreciate you taking your time out of your day and your evening and spending it with us. I really appreciate that. And if there's anything I can do for you in the future, or my group can do for you in the future, please let me know, and we'll absolutely be there. And you're more than welcome to come back anytime, maybe help me co-host a podcast or hang out or whatever.
Awesome. Thanks.
It was a pleasure, and have a great weekend and have fun with your kids.
Will do. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.